You've been told to seek the light, to stay positive, to keep your thoughts clean and your heart pure. But here's the truth no one dares to say out loud. You will never reach the heights of your potential until you've crawled through the filth of your own darkness. Carl Jung didn't speak in polite psychology, he spoke in raw truth. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Think about that, not just as a metaphor, but as a brutal reality. If your soul were a tree, the fruit of your greatness could never reach sunlight unless your roots sank into the mud, deep, into everything you hate about yourself, into the lies you've told, the pain you've ignored, the envy, the rage, the shame, the lust, the cowardice. That is your hell, and it's where your transformation begins. What if I told you that your deepest potential is buried underneath the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to face? What if I told you that your anxiety, your addictions, your laziness, your fears, they are not flaws to fix, but messages from the shadow you've locked in the basement of your mind? This is not another video about positive thinking. This is a message for the one who's ready to descend, for the one who senses deep down that there's more to life than pretending to be fine. This is a journey into the dark, not to be destroyed, but to emerge forged, hardened, evolved. You want to grow? Then dig. Dig into the rage you swallowed, the weakness you denied, the jealousy that burned, because your roots, your real power, lie there. Not in denial, not in light, but in darkness. You don't grow by suppressing the worst parts of you. You grow by confronting them, understanding them, integrating them into something stronger. So ask yourself now, are you willing to stop running? Are you willing to look at what you've avoided your whole life? Because if you are, then keep watching. This isn't inspiration, this is psychological war. And if you're brave enough to fight it, you will never be the same again. Let's begin. You've heard of self-love, but here's what they never tell you. You cannot love yourself until you know yourself. And you cannot know yourself until you've met the side you're most ashamed of. Shadow work is not a feel-good activity. It's psychological excavation. It's digging through decades of repression, peeling back layers of masks, facing everything you swore you'd never admit. Why do you sabotage relationships? Why do you procrastinate when you know what's good for you? Why does success scare you more than failure? The answer is always the same. A part of you is working against you. Not because it hates you, but because it was pushed into exile, and now it only knows how to scream. This is the shadow at war with your conscious self, and unless you stop running and start listening, you'll keep getting in your own way. Jung wasn't alone in this. Nietzsche spoke of the same truth when he said, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." It's a warning, but it's also a map. You can't fight darkness without walking into it. And when you do, you better be ready to face yourself. Imagine the person you admire most, not for their charm, but their strength. What do you think forged them? Comfort, approval, number. It was the battles you never saw, the inner demons they confronted, the nights they sat in silence with their guilt, their rage, their failures, and didn't look away. Greatness does not come from pretending to be pure. It comes from facing your impurity with brutal honesty and transforming it into strength. There's a reason ancient myths repeat the same pattern. The hero must descend. Orpheus enters the underworld. Dante walks through hell. Christ descends before resurrection. Buddha confronts Mara under the Bodhi tree. These aren't religious lessons, they're psychological blueprints. You must go down before you can rise. Every person who's ever become something more than average has made that descent. And if you're wondering, what does this look like in real life? It's not dramatic. It's in the quiet choices. Choosing to journal instead of numb yourself with your phone. Choosing to admit you were wrong when your ego screams to justify. Choosing to sit with your emotions instead of distracting yourself. That's shadow work. That's where power is born, not in grand gestures, but in the tiny acts of rebellion against your own avoidance. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That line is a slap in the face to everything modern spirituality has sold you. Enlightenment is not a bubble bath with candles. It's staring your worst fear in the eye and saying, "I see you, and I'm not afraid anymore." You've hidden from parts of yourself for years, your anger, your ambition, your hunger, maybe because someone taught you they were bad, maybe because you were punished when you expressed them, but now they live in the dark, growing teeth. And until you welcome them back, not as enemies but as exiled allies, you'll never be whole. You cannot build a stable house on a cracked foundation, and your shadow is the part of the foundation you've refused to fix. You can try to cover it with success, with followers, with smiles, but eventually it all collapses. And that collapse isn't a punishment, it's a rescue. It's your soul forcing you to go back and deal with what you've ignored. The more you repress, the louder the shadow becomes. That's why the people who pretend the hardest to be kind, generous, enlightened, are often the most fragile, because they're not grounded in truth. They're living in a fantasy, and when pressure hits, they break, because there's no depth, no root system in reality, only performance. So here's the challenge. Stop performing. Stop trying to be good. Be real. Be whole. That means letting the fire inside you burn, not to destroy, but to forge. Take your anger and turn it into discipline. Take your jealousy and turn it into clarity. Take your lust and turn it into passion. Take your fear and turn it into courage. Every part of your shadow has energy. You just need to learn how to own it. Because the person who can walk into their own hell and return alive, that's the one who can lead others. That's the one who can create, command, inspire. Not because they're perfect, but because they've been through the dark and built a throne in it. That is what it means to grow roots in hell. And once you do that, nothing above can shake you. Hell was never meant to scare you. It was meant to prepare you, because in every ancient story, the hero doesn't start with glory. He starts with descent into the underworld, into chaos, into madness. And the reason is simple. You cannot transform without confronting what lies beneath. Modern culture has taught you to chase the mountaintop, to manifest success, to hustle, to grind. But what no one tells you is that the mountain isn't climbed from the peak. It's climbed from the pit of your guilt, your fears, your failures. That is where every real journey begins. Look at Dante. He didn't enter paradise until he walked through 9 circles of hell. Every sin, every horror, every agony, not metaphorically, literally. He faced them one by one, because only when you descend with eyes open can you rise with wisdom. And Jung knew this too. He studied mythology, alchemy, religion, not for theology, but for psychology. Because these stories aren't fantasy, they are instruction. When you dream of falling, of drowning, of being chased, it's not random. It's your unconscious trying to speak, trying to drag you into the place you've avoided. And if you ignore it long enough, your body will scream. Panic attacks, depression, exhaustion, because what you resist persists. Every culture understood this. In Egyptian myth, Ra, the sun god, doesn't just rise every day. He travels through the underworld each night, battling monsters. In Norse myth, Odin gains wisdom by hanging himself from the world tree, suffering in solitude. In Christianity, Christ descends to hell before ascending to heaven. In Buddhism, the prince becomes enlightened only after confronting his own temptations. These stories repeat because they hold the same message. To be reborn, you must first die to who you were. And maybe you've already felt that. The moment life crushed you, the breakup, the loss, the betrayal. The moment you realized your smile was fake and your life was a shell. That was your descent. And instead of running from it, what if you saw it for what it truly was? An invitation, a challenge, a portal to something more. Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. You cannot wake up without discomfort. You cannot evolve by staying comfortable. You must confront the lion inside you, the liar, the addict, the coward, not to punish but to transform, because that part of you, it holds the fire, the energy, the truth you've buried under performance and politeness. We live in a culture of masks. People terrified of their own reflection, addicted to dopamine, attention, validation, because they've never gone inward, never asked, "Who am I without all this noise?" And that silence terrifies them, but not you, because if you're still watching, it means you're ready, ready to face what others flee, ready to reclaim your soul. The hero's journey isn't a Hollywood storyline, it's a spiritual law. First comes the call, then comes the refusal, then the descent, and only those who make it through the abyss return with power. Real power, the kind that doesn't flex, but transforms. You want to be wise? Then suffer consciously. You want to be strong? Then bleed with your eyes open. You want peace? Then make war with your demons, because the road to heaven always passes through hell. And every step into your darkness, every confession, every revelation, every layer you shed is a step toward becoming the one thing this world desperately needs. Someone who has faced their own chaos and come back whole. And this isn't theory, this is the story of every real transformation. Think of every person you admire who rose from nothing. They didn't do it through shortcuts or self-help slogans. They went through hell. Maybe they were broken by trauma. Maybe they were swallowed by addiction. Maybe they stood on the edge of ending everything, but somehow, they faced the abyss. And instead of letting it devour them, they drew power from it. This is what Joseph Campbell meant when he said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And that fear, it's not a weakness, it's a compass. Whatever you fear to face in yourself, that's exactly where you need to go, because the parts you've rejected are the parts that will complete you. Do you know why the descent is necessary? Because you're not who you think you are. You're a story, told by your ego, wrapped in illusions, shaped by trauma. And to become something greater, that story has to burn. And it will hurt. You'll grieve identities you thought were you. You'll lose friends who only liked the mask. You'll walk away from the life you built on false foundations. But from those ashes, something real will rise. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were taught to be. And that process is violent, it's emotional, it's lonely, but it is the path to liberation. You stop needing approval. You stop fearing rejection because you know who you are, not because someone told you, but because you earned that knowledge through descent. And here's where people misunderstand this path. They think confronting darkness will make them dark. That if they admit their rage, they'll become violent. That if they accept their lust, they'll become immoral. But Jung taught the opposite. The acceptance of the shadow leads not to chaos, but to wholeness. When you repress your dark side, it acts out without your control. But when you integrate it, it becomes your ally. It becomes fuel. The most dangerous person isn't the one who avoids anger. It's the one who understands it, owns it, and channels it into purpose. The most stable leader isn't the one who fakes calm. It's the one who has faced their inner storms and come out with clarity. The warrior who hasn't faced fear is reckless, but the one who has walked through fear is unstoppable. This is what the descent does. It forges a new kind of strength, not brute force, but self-knowledge, the strength to walk into failure and not collapse, to sit with sorrow and not numb it, to feel shame and not be defined by it. That is the kind of power no title, no status, no money can give you, because it's not external, it's forged within. We live in a world obsessed with image. Social media teaches you to curate perfection, filters, facades, performance. But the soul doesn't care about filters. The soul only grows in truth. And truth is messy, it's wild, it's uncomfortable, but it's the only soil deep enough to grow something eternal. And if you're thinking, this sounds hard, you're right. It is. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. What's the cost of not going through it? What's the cost of staying shallow? Of building your identity on avoidance? Of living a life that looks good but feels hollow, because eventually life will bring the descent to you, through pain, through loss, through failure. And in that moment, you will either collapse or rise. Not because you're ready, but because you've trained in the dark. You've faced your own hell and built roots there. And that's when heaven is no longer a dream. It's your destination. There's a lie modern culture tells you, that you can fix your life with motivation, that positivity can erase pain, that all you need is to think better thoughts. But Carl Jung, Friedrich Nietzsche, Søren Kierkegaard, they all knew better. They knew that the real work, the brutal, soul-shaking work, is not in chasing light, but in making peace with your own shadow. Jung's concept of the shadow wasn't some vague idea, it was the cornerstone of human psychology. But Nietzsche took it a step further. He stared into the abyss and said, "If you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." What does that mean? That the moment you start looking into your own chaos, your own pain, it looks back. And that confrontation changes you, not temporarily, not intellectually, permanently. Nietzsche didn't believe in comfort. He believed in becoming, and becoming meant pain. He called it amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not enduring it, not accepting it, loving it. Every wound, every heartbreak, every humiliation. Why? Because those moments are the hammer and fire that forge your deeper self. "What does not kill me," he wrote, "makes me stronger." Not because it's inspiring, but because it's true, if you let it transform you. Then there's Kierkegaard, the philosopher of despair. He didn't hide from suffering, he analyzed it like a surgeon. For him, despair wasn't the enemy. Despair was the beginning. The moment you realize your life has no meaning unless you give it one. And from that emptiness, you either build or collapse. He wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing one's self, can occur very quietly in the world as if it were nothing at all." That's the real danger, not death, not failure, but losing your identity by never confronting who you really are. Drifting through life in silence, smiling on the outside while rotting within, and calling that fine. Albert Camus went even deeper into that silence. He wrote of Sisyphus, the man cursed to roll a boulder uphill for eternity. Most people see that as punishment. Camus saw it as freedom. Because in the absurd, meaningless grind of life, you still have one weapon, your choice, your will, your refusal to be broken. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. And that is the power of philosophy when it's lived, not read. When it becomes your armor, your lens, your discipline. Jung showed us that confronting the shadow makes you whole. Nietzsche showed us that embracing suffering makes you strong. Kierkegaard showed us that despair awakens truth. And Camus showed us that meaning is not found, it's created in resistance. So what does all this mean for you? It means if you're looking for comfort, you're in the wrong place. But if you're looking for truth, you're exactly where you need to be. Because the thinkers who've touched the deepest parts of the human soul didn't get there by avoiding pain. They walked into it, sat with it, made it their teacher. Think of your life like a cathedral. You want to build something sacred, then you must dig deep. You must know what materials you're using, not the polished ones you show the world, the raw ones, the cracked ones, the buried ones. Because if you don't know your own foundation, someone else will build it for you and they will build it weak. There is a kind of peace that only comes after war, a kind of clarity that only comes after madness. And the philosophies that endure, the ones carved into history, are not the ones that coddle you. They are the ones that challenge you to wake up, to stop blaming, to stop escaping, to stop chasing dopamine and start facing destiny. because that's what all these thinkers were doing. Jung wasn't writing for comfort. Nietzsche didn't scream into the void for fun. Kierkegaard wasn't afraid to cry in public, and Camus didn't glorify suffering. He weaponized it. And if you're wise, you'll do the same. You want transformation? Then you need a philosophy that cuts, that exposes your lies, that demands your full presence, not as a reader, but as a warrior. This is not academic. This is personal, because the war you're in is not with the world, it's with your own apathy, your fear, your excuses. And now you know what kind of philosophy can actually save you. And here's something they never teach you in school. Philosophy isn't just for professors. It's for warriors, for anyone standing at the edge of a breakdown, a divorce, a death, a failure so deep it shatters your identity. In those moments, quotes won't save you, books won't save you, but a philosophy you've embodied, that will. When you look at Jung, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Camus, you're looking at men who broke. Men who lost everything inside themselves and didn't hide it. They wrote from the wreckage, they screamed their truths. They were not trying to be liked, they were trying to survive, and that's why their words still cut through time like knives. They weren't pretending, and you shouldn't either. Nietzsche's abyss is real, Kierkegaard's despair is real, Jung's shadow is real, but so is the transformation, so is the strength, so is the peace that comes after the war, but only for those who face it. You see, real philosophy doesn't decorate you, it armors you, it gives you a spine when life tries to fold you. When your plans collapse. When the people you trusted leave. When the future goes black. That's when most people reach for distractions. But if you've done the work, if you've descended and faced your hell, you don't collapse. You rise. The Stoics knew this too. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Do you understand what that means? Your problem is not a wall, it's a doorway, but only if you walk through it. Only if you stop seeing pain as the enemy and start seeing it as the path. Epictetus was a slave. He had nothing, yet his mind was freer than most people alive today, because he understood the only true freedom is internal control. Not control over the world, but over how you respond to it. That is what philosophy trains you for, not just how to think, but how to stand when everything shakes. And it will shake. That's not a threat. That's life. You will lose. You will fall. You will break. But if you've taken these ideas and carved them into your bones, you won't just survive. You'll become someone who cannot be broken again. Not because you're hard, but because you're whole. So stop reading philosophy like it's decoration. Read it like it's a weapon. Read it like your life depends on it, because it does. And if you don't feel that yet, good. That means there's still time to build your foundation, still time to prepare, still time to forge the mental armor you'll one day be grateful for. Because here's the ultimate truth. You will face hell, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but it will come. And when it does, the only thing that will matter is whether you've done the work or not, whether you've faced your abyss already, whether you've planted roots in the deepest dirt. This is not about being strong all the time. This is about being real, being honest, being prepared. Because when life cracks your ego wide open and the mask shatters and the ground disappears, you'll either meet your shadow or you'll be destroyed by it. So take these philosophies, not as ideas, but as blueprints, as tools, as fuel, because once you stop running, once you stop pretending, once you stare into that abyss and it stares back, you'll realize something most people never will. You were never afraid of the dark. You were afraid of your own power. Look around you. This is the age of escape. Escape in pixels, escape in pills, escape in endless scrolling, binge-watching, numbing, avoiding. We've built an entire society on distraction because deep down we are terrified of being alone with ourselves. We are terrified of silence. Because in silence, the shadow speaks, and most people, they've never learned how to listen. You think your problem is laziness? Number, it's avoidance. You think your problem is a lack of motivation? Number, it's fear. Fear of what will come up when the noise stops. That's why you reach for your phone the second you feel discomfort. That's why your calendar is packed, but your soul feels empty, because you've been running, not from the world, but from your own depth. Carl Jung warned us, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And it's true, we build entire lifestyles around avoidance, overwork, overstimulation, overindulgence, but none of it works because your shadow is patient. It waits in the quiet, and it grows. That's the tragedy of modern life. We are more connected than ever, but more disconnected from ourselves than any generation in history. And the price is enormous. Anxiety is skyrocketing, depression is normal, purpose is rare. Why? Because no one's taught us how to confront ourselves. We've been taught how to market ourselves, brand ourselves, style ourselves, but never to know ourselves. So what do we do instead? We medicate, we rationalize, we blame, we buy things, but it never sticks because you can't heal the soul with surface fixes. You can't out-hack your humanity. You can't outrun what's inside you. And the more you try, the more power you give to the very thing you fear. But here's the shift, here's the revolution. Instead of running, you turn around, you face it, you sit with it, you ask it questions, you stop treating your discomfort as a disease and start treating it as a signal, because your shadow is not here to destroy you, it's here to instruct you. Every time you feel triggered, jealous, ashamed, afraid, it's not weakness, it's a message. And if you have the courage to listen, to really listen, you'll discover that the thing you were avoiding, it's your teacher. But let's be clear, this is not glamorous. Shadow work isn't sexy. It's not something you can turn into a morning routine with a Spotify playlist. It's ugly, it's raw, it's inconvenient. It comes up when you least want it, in arguments, in failure, in silence. But it's in those moments, those inconvenient, unscripted moments, that your real transformation happens. You want power? Then stop chasing comfort. Stop avoiding the parts of yourself you don't understand. That voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, that's not your enemy. That's the unprocessed pain asking for your attention. That anxiety that wakes you up in the middle of the night, it's your soul screaming, something's wrong. Something's missing. Look at me. And when you finally do, when you sit down with it instead of shoving it away, you'll realize something few people ever learn. Freedom doesn't come from escaping your pain. It comes from transforming it. That's the fork in the road. Escape or confrontation. If you choose escape, life becomes a cycle of temporary highs and devastating lows. You feel like you're spinning in circles, achieving things maybe, but never feeling full. If you choose confrontation, if you make the brave decision to look at yourself with no filter, no mask, no excuses, then you begin to build something solid, not overnight, not easily, but permanently. You begin to trust yourself, to respect yourself, because now you're not just surviving, you're evolving. And that's what Jung meant. That's what every great thinker has tried to tell us. You cannot grow into your highest self without first becoming intimate with your lowest. The more darkness you are willing to hold, the more light you can channel. Not because one erases the other, but because they complete each other. This isn't about being fearless, it's about becoming someone who fears nothing inside themselves. And once you reach that point, once you stop running and start integrating, you become something rare. You become someone the world cannot shake, because your roots are no longer shallow. They are grounded in every truth you once tried to avoid. And that, more than anything, is what the world needs now. Not more polished people, not more empty confidence, but more rooted human beings. People who have met themselves fully, and in doing so, gained the power to meet the world with depth. Here's the hard truth. Society profits from your avoidance. The more disconnected you are from your truth, the easier you are to sell to. They sell you peace through products, identity through brands, purpose through hashtags, but none of it fills the void, because the void isn't out there, it's inside, and only you can walk into it, only you can fill it, not with things, but with depth, with integration, with shadow. You see it everywhere, fake smiles, perfect selfies, empty eyes, people talking about self-love without knowing self. People chasing validation because they've never sat with their pain long enough to understand it. They've built a life on likes, but are dying for real connection. And that connection, it starts within, with truth, with confrontation. The system will call you broken. It will say you need help. And maybe you do, but not because you're broken, because you've been lied to. Lied to about what healing really means. It's not always gentle, it's not always soothing. Sometimes healing means screaming into a pillow. Sometimes it means crying for hours over wounds you thought you were too strong to feel. Sometimes it means walking away from everything fake so you can finally breathe. You don't heal by pretending, you heal by becoming. And becoming starts with confrontation. So what does this look like practically? It looks like radical self-inquiry, journaling the things you don't want to admit, not just your pain, but your part in it, asking questions like, what am I avoiding? What am I pretending not to feel? What lies am I still living inside? And then having the courage to stop living them. It means spending time alone, not to isolate, but to hear yourself think. It means embracing discomfort, not masochistically, but as a guide. And it means setting fire to the false self so something real can emerge from the ashes. This is the ultimate rebellion. In a world that wants you weak, distracted, dependent, you choose strength, you choose clarity, you choose depth. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. And the moment you stop escaping, something shifts, the anxiety starts to fade, the fog lifts. And for the first time, maybe in years, you feel your feet on solid ground. Not because the world got easier, but because you got deeper, more rooted, more stable, more unshakable. This is the turning point. This is the path less taken. And if you walk it, if you truly walk it, there will come a day when you look back at the version of yourself that ran from pain, that chased comfort, that lived on autopilot, and you won't even recognize them. Because now you're not a product of escape, you're a product of confrontation, you're forged, and there is nothing more powerful than a human being who has made peace with their darkness. This is where it all comes together. The descent, the shadow, the pain, the confrontation. This is where you understand what Jung meant, not just with your mind, but with your soul. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. He wasn't being poetic. He was issuing a challenge, a warning, a path. You want to rise. You want to reach heaven, your full potential, your highest strength, your divine clarity. Then you must go deep. You must dig. You must go to the places inside you that feel like death and mine them for life. Your greatness is not built in your best moments. It's born in your worst ones. The nights you wanted to give up, the mornings you felt numb, the conversations that shattered you, the lies you told yourself, the betrayal, the shame, the failures, that is your soil. And every root you plant there makes you stronger, deeper, more unshakable. You see, growth isn't about adding more, it's about confronting what's already there and transmuting it. You take your pain and you turn it into presence. You take your wounds and you turn them into wisdom. You take your darkness and you turn it into depth. Because when you stop fearing your shadow, you become someone who can carry light without being blinded by it. You become someone who can lead without ego, love without fear, act without apology. That is what it means to grow into heaven. Not to escape this world, but to embody all of it. Light and dark, strength and softness, grace and fire. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop escaping and start evolving? Are you ready to make this descent not just a thought, but a transformation? Because if you are, then you must do one thing right now. Publicly claim it. In the comments, write, "I choose to face my shadow." Let that be your commitment, your declaration, your first act of conscious transformation. Not for me, for you. Because the moment you declare it, you've already taken the first step. And if this video woke something up inside you, don't ignore it. Follow it, fuel it, subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with someone who's on the edge of their own transformation. Not for popularity, for power, for truth, for impact, because this journey is just beginning. And what waits on the other side of your shadow is your greatness.